Um, so how many people are musicians in the room? 2, 3, sorry, 5. Okay, that's okay. Are the other people here just sort of interested in the music industry or the impact of technology on music and that kind of thing? Yeah, okay, cool. So now I know who you guys are. So I titled this talk "While YouTube is more important than ever for music," predominantly because I run a YouTube company which is focused on the music industry. So that all makes sense. But this is sort of more of a almost philosophical kind of talk about what is going on in the music industry overall in terms of the impact of technology and how there's, to a certain extent, a pushback, and also how tech wants to go a lot faster than what music is willing to go. So that's sort of where we're at. So why am I qualified to talk on this topic? So I've worked in the music industry for over 13 years now, both in the US and the UK in the last 7 years. I'm based out of London, and the company is based in London. For the last 5 years in particular, I've specialized in working on YouTube, starting from when I was working at EMI Music. I was the YouTube and VEVO account manager for Europe and Australasia, so I was going all over Europe and doing the monetization best practice and the marketing best practice training with all of our labels. About a year and a half ago, I went out on my own, and my first client was Pink Floyd, followed by Phil Collins. So those are still our 2 biggest clients that we work for, but we now have over 15 channels on the network. We've only really started going in the last 2 months or so. So our aim is to get 100 artists signed to the network by the end of the year. So what that means essentially is we're signing artists for their YouTube rights. That's the exclusive use of their YouTube channel, and anytime anybody uses their music on YouTube as a platform, we help them make money from that usage and also help them in terms of using it for marketing material and promotional purposes as well. So I'll again talk about that a little bit more later. So what's going on in the music industry? And how is technology impacting on it? It's a really interesting time, I think, for everybody, but in particular for music, just because music has always been the first hit in terms of media and the impact of technology impacting on media. So, we had Napster, which came out in 1999, and then it was shortly thereafter we had the first launch of the iTunes store, where MP3s were available to download. This quote, which I often reference when I'm talking to people, this book is called The Future of Music. It was written in 2005, which was a decade ago now, and it was really quite ahead of its time for what they were talking about. So basically the whole concept of the book is a future in which music will be like water, ubiquitous and free-flowing. And when you think about it, we're almost there at this point. I mean, every single person I've talked to the last few days has talked about Spotify or Deezer or the new iTunes streaming service that's launching next week. I mean, a lot of the way that we consume music isn't an active act anymore. It's very passive, where music is everywhere, whether you realize it or not. Whether you're actively consuming it or passively consuming it, it's there and it's available. So the challenge that we face in the music industry right now is, how do we monetize that? How do we actually extract money out of that for the artists? So I have another quote. I didn't put it up here because I don't want everybody just reading the text, but it's a really interesting way of looking at what's going on in the recording industry in particular. So this guy, Jeff Taylor, he's the chief executive of the BPI, which is the British equivalent of the RIAA or the Polish equivalent of SPAF. He put out a quote last year, and he said, "The unprecedented choice we now give consumers in terms of how they discover and access music means that a record label increasingly operates within a complex matrix of varied business models. This complexity makes the rapid evolution of the recorded music industry harder than ever to predict. Nonetheless, there is a strong sense of optimism amongst labels about its future. We are super serving the music fan, and we believe that is the key to growth." So when you think about it, it's not just about the record labels being an all-encompassing, changing their business model, trying a 360-degree deals, which means that record labels sign an artist and they actually get a cut of money from all of the artist's revenue streams, not just from the recorded industry part. So my first point is where we have this very nostalgic 20th century view of music at the moment, and it's transitioning very slowly. A lot of the time people will think of music as in the music industry equals the recording industry, but the recording industry does not equal the music industry. The recording industry is one portion of all the different revenue streams available to a recording artist. An artist, not necessarily just a recording artist. In the 20th century, we had the release of vinyl, and they created the record player and the CD player, and the way that we consumed music was through physical form, where somebody would actually have to go to a store and buy that music, whether it was vinyl or CD or tape or whatever, and then they would have to go home in order to consume that music on whatever device it was that actually played it. And this sort of, this sort of way in which the consumer is used to consuming music is very different to the way that we're consuming music today. A lot of people now have Spotify on their iPhone or their mobile app, and they're able to go and listen to whatever music they want whenever they want. There's no limit. And even though musicians understand this new way of consuming music, and they know that we're moving away from CDs into more sort of all-encompassing services, we still have this really physical attachment to music. There's this really highly nostalgic attachment to music for a lot of people because they enjoy that experience. I mean, who doesn't like going to a CD store and looking through the racks and picking out a vinyl or CD that you don't know and then taking it home and listening to it and then discovering music that way. Just the music discovery process has changed completely. But my second point I want to emphasize is that we've gone from music being a product to actually music being a service, where it's not just available to buy. Music is on film, music is on TV, music is used in the background in restaurants. Music is available everywhere, and because of that, musicians are starting to realize that they don't just have to rely on releasing an album and going through this sort of very 20th century idea of you're an artist, you go into the studio, you produce an album, you go away, you're sort of secluded from society for a period of time, and then you come out and you've released this creative work. And then in order to sell that work, you then press it onto CDs, and then you go on tour in order to support the release of those CDs. And the whole point of going on tour is in order to make money from selling CDs. That was the whole point of it. But now a lot of musicians are starting to realize, oh, actually most of my money is from doing gigs, or most of my money is from syncing my music to film or TV. There's a lot of different areas where musicians are actually making more money than where they were making from the recording industry. So the shift has been substantial in the last decade. So moving on to how this impacts on online, really. I come across artists every single day, and I'm talking to them and saying, okay, well, do you have a YouTube channel? Yeah. How many views do you have? Oh, not really. I haven't really, put as much effort into it as I'd like to. And I was like, okay. What I've noticed is that musicians will often focus on Facebook and Twitter because these are the easier social medias for them to manage. It's very easy for somebody to put a post up on Facebook or Twitter, especially Twitter. I mean, you can get away with doing that. So that's a way of engaging with your established fan base. But the thing is that on YouTube, the difference between Facebook and Twitter and YouTube is that Facebook and Twitter is where you're talking to your established fan base. That is where your existing fans are. That's not where you're going to accrue new fans. YouTube is where you're going to get your new fans because YouTube is actually the second biggest search engine in the world after Google, and YouTube is owned by Google. So when you think about it, that all makes sense. But I mean, people are using YouTube in order to discover new music, and that is really where you're going to get your new fans. And it's about using YouTube properly in order to convert those potential new fans into an actual new fan. So the artists don't know how to use YouTube, and then they don't have the time a lot of the time. So there's two ways that I've really come across how people really break through the noise. I mean, there's a lot of talk and discussion around, okay, there's so many videos up on YouTube now. In the early days, it was really easy to get discovered. Now it's really hard. How do I really break through the noise? So there's two different ways that I've seen people do, and we actually help people do. The first one is through cover videos. So we all know who Justin Bieber is. And a lot of people cringe when I mention him, but he's pretty much the poster boy for the cover video era. He was the first one to do it, really. So you come across Justin Bieber, 5 years ago, he decided, I'm going to do covers of songs and I'm going to upload them to YouTube. And he ended up growing a massive fan base on YouTube, and that's how he got the attention of record label, and that's how he eventually got signed to a record label. And that, generally speaking, has been the model for record labels to sign new talent over the last 5 years. You come across any other major label artists, Ed Sheeran and Bastille are other two key examples where they built up a fan base by uploading either covers or generally YouTube videos to build up their fan base. Because record labels, they don't want to sign artists who don't already have an established fan base. It's just, that is the reality of how things are. The sort of nostalgic idea of, I still meet bands, it's incredible, I still meet bands who they have this sense where one day they're gonna all of a sudden have this A&R guy walk up to them after a gig and say, wow, that gig was great, I wanna sign you to my label. Like, it just does not happen that way anymore. What really happens is the A&R guys are sitting in front of their computers at the office and they're trawling YouTube. They're going through and looking for new up-and-coming talent on YouTube, and they're looking at your numbers, and they want to know how many fans you already have before they actually reach out to you and start having a discussion. So yeah, I mean, the cover video angle is really successful because it's a way of establishing common ground with people that you don't know. So everybody knows a lot of different songs. If you cover that song, then they're going to know you're already going to have something in common. You both like the same song. So that's how they start reaching out to new fans, basically. The other thing that artists do is they do something innovative. So that's a really broad term. I'll give you one example of that, but there's lots of different ways to be very innovative on YouTube. So I don't know, has anybody seen the Daft Hands video? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So Daft Hands, for people that haven't seen it, it's basically somebody has taken the Daft Punk song Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, and they've written Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger on their fingers, and they do a little finger dance. And I really recommend, if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it because it's really cool. So the thing I would really want to point out here, do I have a laser pointer? Top button. Ooh, look at that. Okay. Technology. This is the official music video for the original Daft Punk music video that was made. If you look at the view count, it has 21 million on it. Look at how many this video has. So it's 57 million. This isn't the original video. You know, this is where somebody has actually taken an original idea and just made something really innovative, and they got more views. The irony is that they didn't make any money off of this. All the money went to Daft Punk. But that's what happens sometimes. So when you create your own original material on YouTube, you get all of the money. But if you borrow other people's music on YouTube, then they end up taking all of the money or a cut of it. So it can depend. But just one example of a way of being innovative on YouTube to get discovered. So in my mind and how I work with artists is I have sort of 3 different tiers of artists. Did these get mixed up? Oh. Sorry, something happened. So there's 3 different levels of artists that we work with. The first one is sort of like the up-and-coming tier of musician, where they're just starting out. They actually probably have a lot of work to do in terms of developing who they are as an artist and what they want to accomplish in their careers. So it's partially them still trying to figure out what sound they're producing. So a lot of the time, it's just about helping them get the basics right, which is basic best practice for marketing. So that means uploading a banner on your YouTube channel and creating content that's telling people what you are doing and who you are, and maybe doing some music videos. You know, it depends on what your budget is as well. So with those guys, it's about teaching them the basics, really, of how YouTube works and how that fits into their overall social media mix, their overall marketing mix, and everything they're doing in their careers, really. So the second tier is the mid-tier musician. So once you sort of hit a certain point, you know what you're doing. You have a good sense of what's going on with your fan base, and you're really trying to, you've pretty much done the fans and friends and family thing, and now it's like taking it to the next level beyond that. So these are the mid-tier musicians. This is where you start getting your music in other places on YouTube or on social media. So you can do a guest video on like Pitchfork in this example. I don't know if you guys have heard of SBTV. It's a really well-known music channel where lots of up-and-coming urban artists in the UK get discovered. You know, going out, doing live performances, uploading those clips to YouTube from other what I call curation YouTube channels, so that your music is being spread across the internet, and it's not just about your YouTube channel anymore. It's about the fact that you're appearing across the platform. So then we get into our top tier musicians. And with these guys, I sort of see 2 different areas. There's the ones that are the younger ones, where I talk to them and I say, what do you want on YouTube? They say sponsorships, because they know that's where the money is in advertising. So they want to get sponsored. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to get sponsored, and it's almost a totally different industry, but basically the concept is that an advertiser matches well with an artist in terms of creating in terms of their philosophy and what they're both looking to accomplish, and they produce either, you know, some sort of content together, or the artist is already releasing content and the sponsor wants to be heard by the same audience or demographic. And then you can also do product placements, which Lady Gaga is famous for, and so on. The other part of it is about control. So, for example, when I'm working for Pink Floyd, there's certain content that they don't want up on YouTube. That's a fact. So we take it down. And that's that. But it's about giving them the ability to have that control and say over what can and can't be available on YouTube or on other streaming platforms as well. So, YouTube. I often relate it to the Wild West because the YouTube industry, which if you didn't realize it is an industry in and of itself, it is pretty much the Wild West. I reference this article on occasion. It's a really interesting article written from somebody who is based out of LA, which is that's where Hollywood is, that's where the YouTube industry is the most developed. His argument in this article was that YouTube industry has gone from being the Wild West to the Gold Rush because the industry has gone from being defined to being refined. And I really actually strongly disagree with this. I think YouTube is still very much the Wild West. There's a lot of things that we're still learning about how YouTube works and how video streaming in general fits into an artist's career and marketing. Yeah, so if anybody asks you, just say YouTube's the Wild West. Everybody's trying anything. Nobody has actually found this is how you do things. There's certain tricks and things that you can pick up and work right now, but they're not going to work like 6 months from now or even maybe next week. And just to sort of emphasize the scale of YouTube and the size of it and the growth. So in the US last year, there were 123 billion views in the US alone. I mean, that's just like incredible. And then when you compare it against all of the other countries, so you have like the UK, India, Germany, Canada in terms of the number of views. And this was just last year. And if you look at all of the different countries, you start to realize that it's not just one continent. It's not just one particular language that uses YouTube. YouTube is used all around the world by everybody. Everybody uses YouTube if they have internet access. And the growth is staggering. I mean, on average, it's about, I think it's 50% growth in terms of views year on year for YouTube. I mean, if you compare YouTube to Spotify or iTunes or anything, I mean, YouTube just trumps everybody. I mean, iTunes and Spotify numbers combined doesn't even impact nearly, come anywhere close to what's happening on YouTube. And the amount of views is, it's not just about the number of views, it's also about the amount of content that's available on the platform as well. So the last stat that they put out was in November last year, and there's now over 300 hours of video being uploaded to YouTube per minute. 300 hours of video per minute being uploaded to YouTube. I mean, there's nobody that's ever going to be able to watch all of that content in their lifetime, that's for sure. But it's just, it's quite staggering when you look at the statistics and see how popular it is. How much of that is actually impacting in terms of, society and culture, let alone marketing for musicians. So, sorry, I don't know what happened to my last slide, but anyway, I think that's sort of it. I mean, I think you can tell why YouTube is important for musicians. It's not just about musicians, it's about why YouTube is important for everybody in general. I think it's really important for people to start to get a grasp of what's going on YouTube and how that impacts on their social media and their marketing, but also in terms of it being one of their core revenue streams as well, because it's the only social media platform where you can actually make money. Like if you compare it to Facebook or Twitter, you got to pay them in order to get the views or the impressions that you want, whereas on YouTube you actually make the money. So that's why it's so important. It really should be, if it's not a core focus for any musician's career. So yeah, if there's any musicians here, I'd love to talk to you. And because we'd love to help you guys. And yeah, I'll be around for questions.
Rebecca Lammers, everybody.
Yeah.
We've still got a little bit of time before lunch, so if anyone has a question. Any questions over there? Back. If you could come forward, please. If I go close to that speaker, this room will explode.
Hi. You've mentioned that one of the ways for new artists to get discovered on YouTube is to make cover songs.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a bit a technical question, but how YouTube generally blocks content if you have someone else's music, for example. How do you do that? How do you upload someone else's music with just, for example, your video and not get banned by YouTube?
So this is sort of where you get into international copyright law and licensing. It's an area that's still very underdeveloped in terms of, if you think the music industry is behind in terms of like if you think of like people running in a race, like technology is like first place, like he's like 100 meters ahead of everybody of the pack, and then you have like the music industry that's sort of like second place. Legal law, they're like 200 meters in the back. Like they're so far behind, and it takes so long in order for any sort of legislation to actually get passed. So the way I look at YouTube and copyright law when it comes in intellectual property in general when it comes to YouTube is that you have to do what's in the best interest of doing whatever it is that you want to accomplish commercially. So there are licensing ways to be able to license that kind of content. There's also, tricks to get around it, which I don't necessarily advocate, but sometimes if somebody says, yeah, use my music, but then it gets blocked, like then you unblock it, or I unblock it. So I think it's sort of a misconception that every time I upload something that isn't my music or my content, it's going to get blocked. In majority of cases, it actually monetizes. So that means that ads start getting served on the video. It's not so many people actually block, and if it does block, then there's ways for you to be able to investigate it or potentially get a license for it. There's no one way to do it, though. It is a very complex area, but I mean, if you're a musician and you join our network, that's something that we work with you on, really. So.
Thanks for a great presentation, Rebecca. First, my question is: you said that music, it's changing from a product into a service, but someone could argue that historically music was a service always.
True.
Because
yeah.
before invention of like a vinyl, then tape and CD, basically there was no such thing as recorded music. So isn't the whole culture kind of going back to the original state of affairs, which is artists have to perform in front of? I mean, if you can say a little more about that, I just find it interesting.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, I think just because in recent history, the way that we were distributing media in general was in a very physical form, and it was, in order to read the news, you had to buy a paper, and it was a very controlled way of distributing that content, and same in music. With technology, it's become a lot more fluid, and yeah, in a way, we are going back to the original, people actually still want to hear live music. They don't just want to hear recorded music all the time. And the same can be said with all different kinds of media forms. So, yeah.
One at the back. We'll make it the last one. I'm getting peckish.
Hi. You mentioned that you compared this YouTube thing to Gold Rush. And when I think about Gold Rush, it's like 1,000 people trying to make money, but there is only one winner, and the winner is the company making tools, making equipment and reels. Do you see the same thing for YouTubers? So of course there's YouTube, which is winning, but do you see like other companies providing tools for YouTubers, which is making a lot of money?
Yeah.
Can you give some examples?
You want some names? Well, my company. I mean, there's a lot of different YouTube companies. In the YouTube industry, they're referred to as multi-channel networks, or they're referred to as MCNs for short. Most MCNs are focused on all entertainment, so they'll sign any kind of channel from gaming to beauty vlogging to sports or what have you. I mean, they'll just want to sign your YouTube channel so that they can monetize your video content. For me, because my background is in the music industry, that's why we're focused on music only, and I think that's where the most help is needed, really, for musicians, because yeah. So like I said, the YouTube industry is most developed in the US. So the biggest players are based in the US. So there's ones like Fullscreen and Maker Studio. Maker Studio was actually bought by Disney. So they're now owned by Disney. So you can sort of tell that Disney is starting to take YouTube seriously as well. Most of the bigger YouTube companies will have been bought or acquired or have shares bought from established media companies or broadcasters, because they're starting to realize that, oh, we need to transition to online video because that's where the people are, that's where the views are. I mean, when you look at the YouTube views, I mean, that trumps anything and everything above any broadcaster or traditional terrestrial TV. That's where people are going. That is where we're headed.
Rebecca Lammers, thank you very much.
Thank
It's been
you.
a real pleasure. Round of applause.